Okay, we are on to feature 2, which is user account maintenance. All right, so we are going to work on users can edit their account details, users can reset their password, and users can delete their account. I am going to start off with this first story here. Users can edit their account details. So I have some resources related to this. Okay, I have a wireframe here with the profile page. So this is what I'm going to start off with in this video, is doing the front end work on this profile page. Okay, I want to go ahead and get the account details title and the subheader, and I want to get this section here. Now, we don't have the profile picture portion of the project done yet, so this won't be in there, but I'm going to also add, I'm going to style my logout button and I'm going to add the delete button, but I'm not going to do anything with the delete account button quite yet. Okay, so let's go ahead and return to our account details page. As we can see, we have quite a bit of work to do to get there. All right, let's go ahead and says create account details section showing user's name, email, username, and password. Not really showing the password though, and profile photo. All right, so the first thing we want to do is we want to console log the data that we're getting on this page. I'm going to say profile data, and I'm going to do data. This will help me know how the data is shaped, and then now I can funnel it to the account details page. All right, so we have email, name, and username. All right, so we are going to add, first we're going to work on this welcome Jane Doe. So for mine, it'd be welcome Callie Stoscope. You can manage your account details here. Perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and use a text component, and I'm going to say welcome. Then I'm going to say data dot, and let's look at the shape of our data. It's just name. Okay. Data is type unknown, so let's go ahead and add the type. So we're going to say type data is equal to, do we have one already? All right, so we're going to say email string, name string, and username string. Perfect. And so now we have welcome Callie Stoscope. All right, we want that to be in the center of the page, so I'm going to add text align center. There we go. All right, let's look at what the rest says. It says you can manage your account details here. Can manage your account details here. All right, now let's take a look. Looks pretty good to me. All right, so now we can go ahead and move on to this section of things. So now when I see something is like a section, I'm going to add a box to keep everything together. Okay, then within the box you can see, so if we're ignoring this right here for now, you can see, which we don't have to ignore it, we could put a box in place for it. So let's do box photo goes here. Okay, so that's going to be this box. Then we're going to have another box, right, for the user account details. So then we're going to do box user account details, and within there we are going to have, right, 1, 2, 3, 4 rows. So I'm going to do one box. Okay, and then I'm going to add what's in the box. So we have name and then Jane Doe, and then we'll end up having an icon button too. So we're going to do text name, and we're going to do text data.name. Okay, then we are going to copy this because we need 4 of these. 2, 3, 4. All right, And then let's take a look. Kind of all over the place because we have to use flex to make this make sense, okay? So I'm gonna change these first to what they're supposed to be. So this is supposed to be email address. This will be data.email. This is supposed to be username. And then this would be data.username. And then password. And then we don't actually send the password to the front end. So we're just gonna do some asterisks here to pretend that that's the password. All right, perfect, kind of, okay? So now let's split it up. So we have a big box here around the whole thing, okay? And that is going to be display flex because we want the two items in it to be next to each other, okay? So I'm gonna say display flex. All right, and then I'm gonna take a look. Okay, so photo goes here, name, there we go. All right, I'm gonna look up Chakra UI, and I'm going to look up avatar. So here's the avatar that you can use. So I'm gonna put that instead of the photo goes here. See if we can get that to look a little bit more similar to the photo that we'll end up having. And then I'll put the name as data.name. And then for SRC, we're just going to do nothing. So I'm gonna just get rid of SRC. All right. So now we have a little CS there. And then the size is 2XS, but we want it to actually be 2XL. So we can make it bigger. So that looks better. All right. And then let's go ahead and add, I want to add like color to it. So I'm trying to look at the second one here. Because that's color. So avatar badge, a wrapper that displays its content in the right corner of the avatar. All right, to upgrade the background past BG. All right, let's just do something like this for now. All right, pretty good, okay? So now we have a little avatar that will represent our photo, and then we'll go from there. All right, so now we have these two things next to each other. The next thing that we want to do is we want to look at, so right, that's these two boxes. Now we want to look at this box here, okay? So as you can see, we do like this box. We do want it to be like a column with all of the names. So we're actually gonna start with these boxes and we're gonna put display equals flex. And now the way I like to do it is I like to do one by one, because once I make one look nice, then I can copy the props to all of the other ones. So I'm gonna add a border around. Okay, so this is like my box here that I'm editing, okay? So then I would flip back and forth between my wireframe designs and I would take a look, okay? So it looks like I want this column here to be like a specific amount of width across, right? So I would probably add here, I want the width to be equal, and I could do a pixel amount or I could do a percentage. So I'm gonna start with a percentage. So let's say 40%, and let's see how that looks, okay? So now this name portion of things is taking up 40% of this box, okay? So that looks pretty good. but I feel like I want the box it's in to be wider. Okay, so I'm gonna add a border around this box here so I can see where it's ending. So see, this is already filling up 100% of the box that it's in. So if I want to make it wider, I actually have to edit this box here, which I can do. Okay, so now that's gonna take up 100% of the thing. You can see that the name is taking up 40% and then the Callie Stove Cup is taking up the rest, okay? But you can tell in my design that's not exactly how we want it to do. So maybe this whole box here is taking up, what, like 60%? So let's go ahead and add that here. So width equals 60%. Okay, so this actually is starting to look a lot better here, okay? So let me get rid of this width 100% and see if that's, yeah, it's gonna change it. So we need that, okay? I also want, you can see there's a gap between the photo and the other box here. So I'm gonna add the gap in there too, and I'm gonna say something like gap equals 10 and see how that looks. Okay, that actually looks pretty good. And then I wanna say, I'm gonna say here, maybe justify content center and see if that centers everything. It does not because it's not flex. Okay, we could try though to make it flex and see how that goes. A lot of this is trial and error. You wanna find the right combination of things to try. Okay, so that didn't really help. I'm trying to center this box here. And it's just trial and error to see what the right thing is going to be. All right. So I don't love using margin 0 auto first, but it typically is the way I end up going with. But anyways, this is telling me that my margin vertically is 0, right? And you can tell that because it has 0 in between the top and the bottom. But then you can see that it's automatically and like centering itself, this entire box, okay? So that is what we ended up needing. But you can see we want a pretty big difference in height here. So you could do this in a few different ways. I think what I would do is, since it looks like we want the same amount of space below it and above it, I think I would use padding. You could use margin as well, but I'm gonna go with padding and try padding 10 and see how that looks. It's not quite as big, so we want to do padding 20, but you can see it started scrunching things in side to side. So I'm actually going to just say padding Y, which means the padding above and below is going to be 20, and then there's no padding on the sides. Okay, that looks pretty good. As you can see though, as I get smaller, right, this is still only going to take up 60% of the screen. So we are going to have to edit that when we get to the idea of responsive design. Typically, when I code a project, I make each feature responsive one at a time, but I think for ease of instruction, I'm going to do responsive design at the end to show how we go and edit everything kind of at once. Okay. But the way you would do it, or the way I would do it at least, is with a media query where I would watch how large the screen size is, and then I would flip this from row to column when it gets to a certain size. All right. Cool. Okay. So the next thing I'd want to look at is I want to go ahead and get rid of my borders. All right. I want to add some spacing in between all of these, and I want to update the rest of my boxes to make sense. So I'm going to say display flex, then I'm going to say width 40%, perfect, and then I'm going to say, do it again here, say width equals 40%. All right, display flex, and then I'm going to say width equals 40%. Okay, that looks pretty good. Let's take a look at our design. Yep, that looks good, but you can see there's spacing in between each of the rows here. So we're going to add that too, and the way we're going to do it is we are going to add a gap here. Let's try 4. Why don't you like gap? Oh, because we already have a gap. I'm adding it to the wrong space. Okay, so we want to add the gap here. Okay, so we want to do display flex, and then we want to do flex direction equals column, and then we want to do gap. Let's try 4. Okay, I feel like that actually looks pretty good. It might be a little bit bigger, so maybe we try gap 3. It also, this is just a wireframe, so it doesn't have to be pixel perfect here. But if you do get a design from a designer and you're at work, you do want to make it picture perfect, okay? All right, so we have our rows with our information. That looks good. And then I want to actually re-add the border because I want to make sure my avatar is centered because it looks like it's not centered here. Okay, so we want to add border 1 pixel solid. Okay, yeah, see how the avatar is not centered in the box? So we're going to, first I'm going to just get rid of the box and see how that helps. I'm going to then add a border around it, which just goes around the whole thing. So I'm going to re-add my box, okay? And then I am going to try to see if I can get this avatar to be in the center of the box. All right, so we are going to flex, which isn't going to do much, but we're going to align items. Perfect. All right, so now we can go ahead and get rid of the borders. That still looks good. We can get rid of the other border here. That still looks good. Okay. All right, so now let's deal with our buttons here. So right now it's just a floating button. So we're gonna wanna do the same thing. I like to wrap everything in a box and then move my boxes around. I'm gonna want 2 buttons, and I'm here. We say delete account. Okay, I'm gonna make this flex. All right, I'm going to add a gap. Okay, let's take a look. Looks like we have the buttons being the same width. So we'd have to ask our designer if they want the same width or not. Since this is a wireframe, I'm not going to worry about it too much. So either what I would do is if I wanted them the same width, I would look at what this delete account button width is, and then I'd make the logout button the same. But I'm gonna say I don't think it's that big of a deal, so I'm not going to worry about it. All right, and then I'm going to steal the margin 0 auto here. I'm going to add it here, which did not do much for us. So I'm going to add border 1 pixel solid so I can see what's going on. Okay, so if you look, the box is actually already 100% of the way. So margin 0 auto isn't going to do anything because the box is already automatically centered, okay? So here we can do justify content center, and that's going to put them in the center, okay? All right, so that looks pretty good in terms of just having the front end look the way it needs to look, okay? So now that we have our buttons, we can go ahead and add our little edit buttons, okay? So I'm gonna go to Chakra UI and I'm going to look up icon. All right. And I am going to try to find an edit icon. So here's an edit icon. All right. And then I am going to add my edit icon here. Then I need to add this. I don't know if I have the icons package installed. So I'm likely going to need to, yeah, I don't have it installed. So I'm gonna need to add it. So I'm going to open up a new terminal. I'm going to CD into my front end and I'm going to add the icons package. All right. So it says avoid passing on click handlers to icon components. If you need a clickable icon, use the icon button instead. All right, so let's click on icon button because it is what we need. All right, so let's go ahead and add that instead. And we're gonna paste that in. Let's import the icon button and we're gonna change this to edit icon. And then we're going to change this to edit name. Let's take a look. Let's take a look at our error messages. I'm going to try to restart this here. All right, and look, now we have our little icon button. Perfect. All right, but you can kind of see this is already messing up our mojo a little bit, okay? So the first thing I would look at is this the right size that I want my button to be, okay? And then I would edit it from there. So I'm gonna go ahead and add my border once again, okay? So I can see what's going on, all right? So this button's height is now significantly larger than the line was before, okay? So the text is not vertically aligned inside of this box, so that's why the text is appearing at the top and then the button looks centered, okay? So the first thing that I would do is I would look into, do I want to change the size? And I would try something like XS, okay? And I need to figure out, is that what size I want? Okay. What was it before? It looks like it was probably medium before. Okay, so I don't want medium. I think I want small. Okay. So then I need to make my text aligned with the button, okay? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna look up the height of this icon. The icon is 32 by 32. So I am going to make my line height here 32 pixels. And that is going to center my text vertically. Perfect, okay? Now I don't want my icon to be right next to it. I want it to be in a column of its own here, okay? So I need to figure out how I want to do that. And so I'm going to play around a little bit with the width. So before I said that I wanted this width to be 60, I'm going to take that off. Oops, nope, not that, my bad. Here, I'm going to shrink some of these down. Okay, so before, shrink these ones. Okay, before I said I wanted that this width, I wanted to be 40. I'm gonna kind of delete that. All right, and now all of them are all shrunk, right? But the whole box is going to be the width that I want. So I'm gonna use flex instead. So I'm gonna say flex is 1 here. All right, and that's going to mean that this takes up as much room as it can and everything else fills in what's left, okay? Then I'm also going to say that this is flex equals 1, okay? So now these two are gonna take up the same amount of space, and then the button is going to take up what's left, okay? So I like the way that that looks. Let me take the border out and see how I feel about it. I think that looks pretty good, okay? So I'm going to try to use that for the rest of them too. So I'm going to copy my icon button. I'm going to add it in. I'm going to take this width out, and I'm going to say flex equals 1. Then I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to say this is flex equals 1 too, and I'm going to see how it looks. Okay, that also, in my opinion, looks good. So I'm gonna keep on keeping on then. So I don't want this to be 40 anymore. And I want this to be flexible too. And then I'm going to copy and paste my icon button in. Now, you can see that each of these components are being repeated over and over. Anytime you start to repeat something over and over, that means that you should make your own component for it and then add props instead, which we will do to kind of sum up this video. All right, I think that looks pretty good. So then I'm gonna go ahead and take a look at the page. I feel pretty good about that. All right, the only thing that I don't know if I feel good about is this gap here, because I think that looks better. Does that look better? Yeah, I think so. All right, so now I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna make a component out of each of these rows instead, so that way the entire component looks a little bit less messy. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go into my components folder and I'm gonna create a new folder, and I'm going to say profile. So these are gonna be all of the components that I can make for my profile in here, okay? And then I'm going to do like user detail row.tsx, okay? And then I'm gonna do const user details row return. All right, I'm gonna head back to profile, and I'm going to take one of these, and I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to put it in here, and I'm going to import all of my missing imports. All right. Go back to profile, let's copy this, let's paste it in here. All right, then I need to export my component. All right, and then I need to pass in, what do I want to pass in? Okay, so I want to pass in the field and the value, okay? And then I'm going to call that props. But do you see how this is easier to refactor than it would be to think this through? At least in my opinion, it's easier to be like, oh, I need 4 rows and they have a field and a prop and they all share the same icon button, so perfect, I can make this the same. Okay, so then this here is going to be field, and this here is going to be value. So now we have a user details row component, okay? And we can go ahead and comment this out and put in user details row. And then we want to have field equals name. and then we have value equals data.name. And then we want to do add a colon after. All right, so now it looks the exact same, perfect, and it takes up a lot less room. So now that this looks good, I can go ahead and delete that, and then I can do the same thing 3 more times. 1, 2, 3, and then I'm going to change this to email address. This is going to be data.email. This is going to be username, data.username, and then this is going to be password, and then the value is going to be a bunch of asterisks. All right, and then I can go ahead and get rid of these rows. Perfect. And so here you can see that we have our values. Now you can map this out even more, to be honest, like make this even better. So right now here we're repeating user details rows over and over. So what I could do as well now is I can make an array, right, with each of these fields and then each of these values, and then I could map over the array and return user details rows, passing it in. Okay, I feel fine with this though, because I feel like it's easy to count and look at. Okay, but if you're starting to like reuse this type of format over and over where you're making rows, you might actually want to make it a little bit less, like you might want to change it from user details rows to just like table row or something like that, and then pass in the information like that. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and go over here. I have this done. Oh, you know, I should add an edit button here, but I'm gonna wait and do that when I add the profile. So I'm going to go to my, if I have time, I'm going to find this, and I'm gonna go ahead and say add edit button to photo on account details page that will allow users to edit their profile photo. All right, and then I'm going to say create edit photo route. Okay, so now that is accounted for. So here we're only going to work on editing these and the delete account and a reset password feature. All right, let's go back to account maintenance. We can click it off. We added an edit button next to each piece of user data. Okay, so next video we will start working on what happens when you actually click that edit button. All right, happy coding.